This episode is brought to you by Instant Impact. Instant Impact provides transformative talent solutions to small and mid-sized companies that are making between 30 and 500 hires each year. If your recruitment's giving you a headache, don't know where to start, then give the team at Instant Impact a call or visit www.instant-impact.com for more information. Hello and welcome to We Need to Talk About HR. I'm your host, Felix Mitchell. In today's hyper-competitive landscape, businesses need to purposefully curate competitive advantage everywhere we can. And HR's position is a fascinating one in that it straddles all other functions from the executive or boardroom all the way through to finance, sales, marketing, really everywhere in the business. And that gives us more weapons than most. We often talk about the need for people leaders to go beyond our own agenda and to root all of our objectives into the company at large. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to do a bit of a deep dive into building culture that creates a competitive advantage. We've got a fantastic guest here to do just that with. Brita Ohlin is the Chief People Officer of Consafe Logistics Group, where she's worked for nearly a decade and has overseen a period of rapid growth and huge transformation. Brita, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Felix.
It's really exciting to have you here. I wonder if you could just take us back to maybe the early days at Consafe Logistics. Why was it, when did you identify a need for a sort of change in the way that you approach culture?
So, I started at Consafe Logistics almost 10 years ago. When I joined the company, we were not very successful from a business perspective, meaning that we did not provide value to our stakeholders. We did not earn a lot of money, and we did not see a big growth. Also, when looking at the key indicators in culture, looking at engagement, how motivated people were to engage with the company, we did not see very good results either. So we saw that we had to make a change, both from a business point of view, but also from a culture and people point of view.
So all of your indicators were pointing towards that. Was this sort of an ongoing trend, or was there one moment that made you think, actually, something's got to change here?
I think when starting at Consafe Logistics, I quite quickly realized that we had to do something. And when I looked historically back from a financial point of view, we realized we had to do something. Cultural point of view, people were quite okay, but we felt that people needed to kind of lean forward a little bit more. So I think it's both continuously, but also at one point in time, we said we need to make a change.
It's interesting you said the word okay. I feel like that is, it's such a misleading word, isn't it? Because it almost feels like a business where everyone's doing okay is almost worse than a business where everyone's doing really badly. At least when everyone's doing really badly, there's that, oh my gosh, we've got to change things quickly. When everyone's feeling everything's doing all right, it can be hard to get that impetus behind the change. So I wonder, when you were speaking with the pre-existing leadership of the team, was it hard to get their buy-in to this kind of change? Well,
the big conflict was that we were not doing good from a financial perspective, but looking at the attitude and the kind of atmosphere in the organization was that people felt that they were doing okay. So we had to kind of shake that boat a little. We had a new CEO coming in. So many of the leadership team representatives, they were new. So that buy-in was not really difficult in that sense, because we all understood that we need to make something very different than how it had been before. So we were very aligned in that process. And of course, that makes it easier when you have a new CEO, also a person that is really focused on the culture and understand that that's an important part of the business. So that was not really hard for us at that point, I would say. I think it was more when we started to do the change further down in the organization that everyone was not that happy with with everything.
Well, looking forward to getting into that now. So you identified this need to change. You've got the right buy-in right from the start. How did you what happened next?
What happened next? So, I mean, if we talk about culture, Consafe Logistics had defined 3 core values that I think a lot of companies have to define their culture. And those values we thought was not really represented what we had to do in terms of where we wanted to go. So we actually said, let's remove these values. And then let's have a look. I mean, we took a bit of a long-term perspective to say, so, okay, in 10 years, where do we want to go as a company, both from a business perspective, but also from a cultural perspective. And then we said that, okay, and try to define these are the behaviors. So we started to talk about behaviors, not about values. These are the behaviors that we believe will help us to take us to our long-term vision. And of course, when you have this, when you want to make a change, you need to respect the history, right? So you need to have a respect for all the people that's been there for a long time, doing a lot of good job and all of that. So we started with looking at, okay, what do we have today that's also a result of the history that we want to keep, but what do we not want to keep, and what do we see needs to be changed in order for us to reach our long-term target. So we actually started to define behaviors. So both looking at the history, but what we didn't want to see and what we thought was needed in order for us to reach our long-term goals.
Wow, a lot to unpack there. So I just want to get a little bit more detail into how specific you were about maybe what the business looked like in 10 years. What were the sorts of things that you looked at that defined that? Were you looking at solution? Were you looking at markets? Like how specific were you? Because I mean, you'd almost say today it feels difficult to plan 10 months.
It is. And what we did, we had a 10-year perspective. And the vision we identified, it was 8 points. I should know them by heart now, and let's see if I remember them. But that was, we said that we wanted to be in X number of more European markets. We wanted to be the most profitable supply chain tech company. We wanted to be the number one go-to tech supply chain partner. But then we also talked about the culture, and we wanted to be the number one go-to employer within the supply chain industry. But we also defined it that we wanted to have a culture that continuously help us to be ahead of competition. And then the last point was also that we love it. We should go to work every day, and I mean, in 10 years, we should still love it, and we should still see the potential. So we try to define it a bit concrete, but not too concrete, because, it changes all the time, but a little bit of long-term perspective.
And did you, just out of interest, this is a bit cheeky because it's relevant to something I'm working on at the moment, but did you put sort of revenue numbers and profit numbers to that, just to give a feel?
We did put revenue numbers, but profit, we just said we want to be the most profitable in supply chain tech industry.
Sounds good to me. And from there, I suppose you did a bit of a gap analysis and thought, okay, well, here are the behaviours that are going to...
Exactly.
And then and the reason why I'm being really specific here is no longer because it's a cheeky steal for what we're doing, what I'm working on at the moment. But I think one of the things that's really useful in these conversations where we're looking at a case study is just to be really specific. So
yes.
Roughly, I mean, behaviours, you often will have 3 or 4 or 5 behaviours underpinning each value. Were you quite selective over the behaviours that you focused on at that stage, or did you have quite a few?
So what we have today, and we started out with 3 behaviors, and we were very clear with the organization that we did not want to define our culture with values, because they're so personal. You cannot say to a person, you need to have this value. I mean, that's something that you have within, but you can give feedback on behaviors, and you can talk about behaviors and what we expect in behavior. So that's why we don't really go with this value thing, because it's so personal. You cannot enforce someone to have a certain value.
So you don't have values at all?
No, we don't have values at all. We only talk about core behaviors. So we started out with 3 core behaviors. And then under each core behaviors, we kind of stated a number of more concrete points. But then as we go along, we added one more core behavior, and I think that's how you need to work with culture. It's not a fixed thing. It's like continuously something you need to work with and develop.
Absolutely. And so those core behaviors at the beginning, were they defined with your leadership team?
Yes, they were. So we looked at, okay, where do we come from, our history? Where do we want to go from a long-term perspective? How do we want to be perceived by the market? So our customers, they should kind of recognize, if we go to a customer presentation saying, these are our core behaviors, they should recognize us in that when they interact with our colleagues. So that's how we did it. And then, we were the leadership team defined them, but then all employees got the opportunity to give input and kind of have their say in it. But it was, I would not say a bottom up, I would say a top down with a little bit of bottom up.
Yeah, and I suppose it's got to be one of those two. And if you're looking to redefine and change, it's got to be top down.
Yeah.
So you've got the where we want to get to, the behaviours that are going to help get us there.
Mm-hmm.
I suppose maybe the hardest part was the next stage, which is how do we get the whole company on board? How do we communicate it? How do we run that change program? And I think that's where a lot of sort of cultural change goes wrong.
Mm.
So what was it? How did you go about rolling it out across the business?
Implementation, yeah. So we kind of launched our core behaviors and explained the story around why we think the core behaviors rather than values at a company event, a summit. And that company event we continue to have every year. But for us, it was really important not to have this big bang. One day when you come to the office, there are posters on the walls, and then after a few weeks, you just go back to normal. So we didn't actually have any posters on the walls or anything. We built a kind of an incremental plan in sprints. So we one sprint was 4 weeks. Mm-hmm. And then we focused on one core behavior. And then we tried to integrate the core behavior and examples into the daily work of people. So we worked a lot with screensavers. So when you logged into your computer, there could be a question saying, okay, have you remembered to give your colleagues feedback? Mm-hmm. And then after that sprint, 2 or 3 weeks, we had a question asking, so have you received feedback from your colleagues these last couple of weeks? And then we tried to use our own software so when people had to leave the office, they had to scan with this hardware scanner that we use using our own software. So trying to make it a little bit fun as well. But then we also took up these very concrete examples in the communication, in information meetings, so bringing up the good examples, best practices. So we continuously tried also to build it into our processes, company processes, so in our project model. So really trying to just make it part of the daily work rather than have it as a separate thing on the side.
Yeah, and I suppose that's part of, I can't remember the exact number, which is really embarrassing, but it's sort of the sort of generally accepted wisdom that you do things 30 times and it becomes a habit.
Exactly. Yeah.
Actually, I forgot to ask just before, what are the 4 core behaviors, just to give a bit more context to listeners?
So it's together we get there, be accountable and act, strive for greatness, and deliver superior customer value.
Okay, fantastic. So it's really sort of immediately obvious how that goes into people's day to day.
It is.
So And I'd be really interested because I think obviously you are taking an approach where you know where you wanted to end up and you know where you are right now. And to a large extent, you knew the behaviours you wanted to create. But to make sure that you were successful in rolling this out, do you follow a structure when it came to rolling out this sort of the change?
I think what we did was we're an engineering company, so we like to have models and structures, right? But what we did was to build a kind of structure around this. So we called it the it, the we, and I. So really to integrate the business, the culture, but also how people kind of can relate to it. So the it is really much about the business, the strategy, the business plan, the solutions that we provide. The we is very much about the culture, how we interact together internally, but also towards our customers. And then we have the I. And I think often companies forget the I. So how do I, as an individual, connect to where the company is going, and how can I develop in that? So we have also put a lot of emphasis on the I. Talking about the growth mindset, making sure that people kind of want to continuously develop, try out new things and grow with the company, because the company is going to change and you as an individual also need to manage that change. And how do you approach that? So trying to give people the tools to be able to follow that journey.
That is so on the money. And I guess I'd have a question around how prescriptive you are around the I. So do you sort of say, look, here are the things you should learn, or is it this is how you approach your job? Here are the kind of, I guess, ways of working that will help you be successful here. How hands off are you when it comes to the I?
Well, I think we can present the kind of framework and guidance around. So the growth mindset, I don't know if you know about. You're probably big familiar with that. So more talking about how you approach things rather than saying that it's this competence or this knowledge you need to learn. So more trying also to talk about more the behaviors and how you kind of adapt rather than being too explicit in what people need to learn or should learn. So more trying to build that curiosity and making people become a bit more open-minded, wanting to learn, try out new things, maybe a little bit bigger project. So just trying to build that curiosity and mindset rather than pointing at what they should learn.
You're so right. It resonates so much that so many businesses miss the I.
They do. And I think continuously. Also now we talk a lot about psychological safety, because we want to have an environment where people feel that they can make mistakes, talk about them, learn from them. And in order to do so, you need to have a psychologically safe environment. So what is required from that? So there are different means to work with the I think. But that's also something that requires that you continuously bring in new things and look at the world around you and see what is needed.
On the survey question, I suppose the screensavers and the login. What was that like from an employee experience point of view? Did they get annoyed at always having to answer things?
I didn't get any feedback that it was annoying. I think people kind of liked it since we used our own software, trying to make it a little bit more fun and integrated into the daily work. And I think the core behaviors, they were since it came a lot from where we were, the history, so that together we get there. I think people connected to it quite quickly. So I did not get any feedback that people were annoyed, rather on the contrary, that people kind of enjoyed it and thought it was a lot of fun, and also that we mentioned these good examples. So having colleagues that are kind of brought up because they've done something really well in a project, demonstrating the core behavior. So I didn't reach I was not reached by any annoyance and so on. And we always ask in our quarterly engagement service is if people can relate to the core behaviors, if they feel that we act in their team, and we get really good feedback on that one.
That's fantastic. I think sometimes as leaders we do, well, certainly I do, always worry that we're being too intrusive on people's lives. But I suppose if it's great that you had no sort of constructive feedback on that. So I suppose those questions allowed you to measure change within the organization. Is that how it worked?
It was. So I mean, of course, we take this feedback example again, where we asked, okay, or we said through screensavers and other channels, remember to give your colleagues feedback on a regular basis. And then after 2-3 weeks, we could see, okay, so 50% feel that they have received feedback during the latest 2 weeks. And then we could do that measurement again and see. So it was also very good grounds for discussion to bring that up in the team. So say, hey, we don't see any movement now when we talk about how we give feedback and so on. Let's have a discussion around that. So it was also good just to bring the topic up to the table, doing these discussions.
That's fascinating. So I suppose you've got, just reading between the lines, you've got those metrics that you're tracking over the course of the year or whatever the period of change. And I suppose you've also got progress plans against the sprints that you're running that allow you to track it. Were there any other things that you tracked to follow how successful the change management program was?
I think, looking at KPIs like eNPS, engagement, retention rates, those are the things that we kind of saw in the beginning, that these are KPIs that we wanted to change because they were not on a good level. So apart from that, but I also think we have some teams having their Instagram accounts. So we have like one customer team having their own Instagram account.
Oh, cool.
And when we started to see, when we started to run these core behavior implementation, we could see these groups kind of making posts, hashtagging the core behaviors, making a lot of fun about it. So we also saw like in the teams that they were kind of adopting the core behaviors, talking about it. So that was also a really nice way to, KPIs you can always measure from a company perspective, right? But I also think it's about seeing those concrete things out there in the organization and really that people kind of take them and live them every day.
It's like the discretionary bit, isn't it? No one's asking them to send that hashtag out on their Instagram.
No.
Group. It's the bit
exactly.
do off their own back.
Exactly. When it comes from within, I think that's the most forceful way of doing things.
And I guess on the eNPS, I know that we were speaking about this before. You had a huge impact on that number.
We did.
Right.
We went from -17 to now we're 40 something.
That's really
that's
impressive.
Good. Yes, that's good.
And did you have, because I would expect with any change program, there's a risk of in the sort of short term having a detrimental impact on eNPS when those that were, really loved the way that it used to be. So sometimes you just don't get people coming along.
No.
So did you have a short-term dip and then it went up, or was it just up from the off?
I think it was, we started from -17 and then it has incrementally grown. But I think, the culture work, it's not all about that, right? So as a company, we've been also able to focus our business a lot more, making decisions that were hard to take, but really important for our company. So the focus part in the organization. So there's several things, I think. You cannot connect the eNPS only to the cultural journey, right? But it's been an ongoing trend upwards. But now we're also quite profitable, also growing out to other markets. So I think it's a combination of a lot of things.
No, absolutely. And I think people love being part of a business that's on the up.
It is. You want to be part of a winning team. And I think that's what we're on our way to be, the winning team.
Fantastic. So I think you mentioned towards the beginning that you really didn't want it to be a sort of big splash and then lose focus. What are the kind of the measures that you've taken as a leadership team and as a business to make sure that the cultural transformation sort of continues as it, I guess, year on year, month on month, week on week?
So one thing that's really important is that we've built it into our processes in the company. So everything, and I think code reviews, for instance, that is really about giving feedback. So that's also important to connect that. We do lessons learned in our project model. There is mandatory lessons learned. In the performance reviews, you always need to talk about the core behaviors. But we also try to use it when we communicate internally, could always connect it to our culture. But then we also, I mentioned that we have the summit, which is a kind of company event that we have one time per year that we continue to have. And the focus there is the culture. It's really, okay, where are we now? Where do we need to adapt? How do we need to change in our culture in order for us to continue to be competitive? So using that, and in that we also have what we call the Seal Awards, where colleagues can nominate colleagues in 5 different categories connected to these core behaviors. And we see like 200 plus nominations from colleagues. Wow. And all the colleagues get their nomination sent to them afterwards. So there are several things that we do to work with it going forward. But also, we introduced a new value proposition to the market. We connect that very much to how we behave towards our customers. So I think, and I think that's the main point, that you need to connect it to the business the whole time.
And I was actually just going to ask around, I was very interested that one of the key, I guess, metrics, or one of the key audiences for your behaviours was your client base.
Yes.
Have you heard from companies that you work with, or companies that might work with you, that's a big differentiator for you?
I think it is. We often hear from customers that we are good partners and that they are really amazed by how we behave and support them. Then, of course, customers are different and they expect different things. But I think quite often you get, an email from a customer saying that, wow, you really walk the talk and really do your utmost to be our partner. And when getting those kind of emails, so important thing is to share that in the organization. And that's also a way to kind of demonstrate and continuously work with and confirm that people are behaving in the way we want them and think is good for us as a company.
Absolutely. Well, we're here recording in London, and I know that one of the reasons that you're in town is because you've just launched your London operation. So I think one of the big challenges that I know our audience faces with culture, let alone culture transformation, is how that transcends borders, and how you make sure that your London office is on board with those core behaviours, as is your Belgium office, and all over the world. What are some of the things that you do that make sure that those core behaviours are international, whilst allowing you to respect the local nuances?
I think, we operate in the northern mid-European market. And I think, of course, if we would have businesses in Asia, US, it would be more of a challenge. I think that is something that we know. But all new colleagues that starts within Consafe Logistics are invited for a 2-day introduction where we talk about the core behaviors. So I think we have not seen that much challenges in really integrated everyone. I think people accept them and see they're quite logic. It's not very contradictory or very strange core behaviors. So we talk about them, we introduce them to it, but I haven't seen that much challenges in actually getting people on board.
Do you think that having behaviours as opposed to values might be part of that?
Maybe.
That reason?
Maybe.
Just because I think maybe behaviours are a little more practical.
It is, and you can give feedback on them. And saying that you need to show passion. Okay, so how do I do that? You need to show drive. All right, but if you're more specific, saying that, when you do a presentation, it's really important that you look people in the eye, that you have prepared good enough. That's when you can become more concrete.
So I can't believe it. We're coming to time. I just want to ask a couple of questions around the future. So as the organisation continues to scale, as you continue to strengthen the business, do you see any challenges to those core behaviours? Particularly in this world where everything feels like it's changing all the time, new technology, new pressures, new geopolitical shocks. Do you see anything that's sort of risking those core behaviours?
I think it's really important that you don't kind of get stuck with the, now these are the core behaviors we have, but we need to keep them 100% at all times for all 100 years ahead. I think you need to stay adaptive and listen to what's happening in the world around you and continuously kind of try to work with a culture. So I think for now, our core behaviors fit our organization very well, but it could very well be in 2 years we feel, okay, this core behavior is not that relevant to us anymore. We need to add this one. So I think it's today, I think we're good, but let's see in the future. And I think that's also how you need to work with culture, to continuously adapt and add new things and remove things and explain why you do it. But don't be afraid of kind of doing these changes to adapt to the world around you.
Couldn't agree with you more. So who's responsible in the organisation for keeping that eye on whether you've got the right culture? Is it Chief People Officer, CEO? Is it a shared responsibility? What do you think?
I would love to say that everyone is, right? But we all know. But I think we have and it's fantastic to work with the CEO that really puts people and culture on the agenda. So I would say it's a mutual responsibility in the management team, but also having the dialogue with our employees in different forums, talking to the managers, trying to understand, looking at where the customers are going, where the market is going. So I would say, of course, me and CEO are kind of, I think, the ones holding the culture stick the highest, but I do believe that everyone contributes to that. And it's about being used to 2 ears and 1 mouth, right? So listen, see what kind of is around and being out there in the organization to understand. But listen to the feedback and act on it. So it's a shared responsibility, of course. With that, culture is everyone's responsibility, right? It's not.
Absolutely right.
But I feel kind of utterly responsible for it. Of course, it's a passion I have.
Fantastic. That really, really comes across. Thank you so much for joining us today. I've had so much fun. It's been such an interesting conversation.
Thank you so much, Felix.